So much going on when it comes to those speedboats leaving the coast of Venezuela, heading north to the United States. Nobody's really arguing that they're running drugs anymore. We, in fact, saw some pretty good quality, high definition pictures of barrels and barrels of something white that are boarded on these boats that are leaving at all hours of the night, and we are taking them out to protect American citizens. Well, the left in this country wants this to be called a war crime. The right in this country, some who are weak-kneed, really want more investigation. I'm not really sure why we're arguing about it, I'll be honest with you. I've got Brent Sadler on, Senior Research Fellow, Naval Warfare and Advanced Technology at Heritage.org. Brent, good to see you again. How you doing?
Yeah, likewise. Great seeing you, and thanks for having me back.
You're very welcome. Do we have the right to blow up bad guys trying to bring drugs into our country?
Well, we certainly have every right to prevent people bringing in things that hurt or maim or even hurt our economy, let alone American citizens. So I think what we're doing is long overdue, and it's nice to see the Congress exercise a little bit of due diligence. It's unfortunate too many of the politicians decided to get out ahead of the facts, and now they're all walking back trying to characterize all this as, war crimes or illegal acts, and now they're just saying they don't feel good about it.
Well, the argument they tried to make, and let's really break this down because this is how stupid it gets. Okay, it was okay that you blew up the boat bringing tons of cocaine north. That's okay. Yeah. But two guys survived, and they were hanging on the side of the boat, and then you killed them anyway, and I guess they deserve due process or something. It turns out, after more information came in, as you just said, very wisely, they got back on the boat, and they were allegedly electronically in touch with another boat. Tell them to come and save us or come and get us or let's continue this operation. So it was fully righteous to kill them because they were still trying to do the bad deed. Why did these politicians get so far ahead of it? Brent, do they just want to get rid of Hegseth? Do they just want some sort of a black eye for Trump? Why didn't they wait the extra 15 hours to find out what really happened?
Well, the first thing, I think context is a little important. So I don't think when the Seditious Six, the so-called Seditious Six, made their infamous video a few weeks ago, this is Senator Kelly and several other Democrat Congress members, that they were basically saying it's your responsibility as someone in uniform to not perform illegal orders, without saying what that is or why, but they set the context that everything that President Trump does is illegal, so therefore you have an obligation not to follow orders. Reality is they have all been legal and held up in court time and time, and the real part of it is it has to be manifestly illegal. And none of this is anywhere near that. So you have that whole kerfluffle is percolating. And then in probably a perhaps of like, aha, I told you so, perhaps in their mind, they then try to glom onto this of like, this is the stuff we were talking about. And the reality is there's nothing against the law of armed conflict that occurred. And I mean that because what came out was there was a lawyer, JAG officer, that was in the targeting cycle who gave the legal advice at the time is a second, third, fourth attack, because there were 4 attacks in this interception that occurred. And each time the legal officer said, yeah, legal, go forward. The other part of it is the target was never the people, though that doesn't necessarily matter in a broader scope. But in this context, going after the cartel's drug trade, the target was the boat, and the boat was still functioning, and the drugs were still there.
Yes.
So the target was never the people.
It's such a great point. The target was stopping the operation that would have brought the drugs here. And those people, if they survived and they were waving a white flag and floating around, maybe that's one thing. The boat was still, as you said, it was still afloat. They got back on the boat. Allegedly, they contacted some more bad guys to come and continue the operation. So obviously, it's rightful. But I didn't make the connection between the Seditious Six and what happened in this case. I'm glad that you did. Now, let's get into that in earnest in a second. His book is called Naval Power in Action, Seizing the Initiative in the New Cold War with China. This is Brent Sadler. Go and get that book right now. So let's tie those two together. Kelly comes out, and he's the one who's really on the hook because he could be recalled and might face a court-martial. We'll see if that actually happens. But he comes out, other members, former members of the military, other members who are intel agents or officers, they come out and they make the insinuation that this administration, they literally said it's a troubling time and this administration is doing some troubling things. Oh, and by the way, you don't have to follow illegal orders. The insinuation was, as you said, that the orders were illegal. So those who think that we're stupid glommed onto this thing, this operation off the coast of Venezuela, saying, see, here's the illegal order, and it turned out it all fell apart. So Brent, you know them pretty well. They're not going to stop now. They're going to keep on looking at everything that Hegseth does, everything that President Trump says and does when it comes to the military, to try to now bolster the case, the false case that was made by those six, right?
No, absolutely. And quite frankly, I would welcome every bit of the congressional oversight, because at every turn that they make, they look foolish, and certainly they haven't done their homework. With regards to the Seditious Six video, they all understood very clearly what they were doing. And, the one argument is bring back Senator Kelly, served retired 20-plus year naval officer, to bring him back to be court-martialed is one thing. But quite frankly, all six of them should be reviewed and should be investigated for federal law violation 18 U.S.C. 2387. And what that specifically states is it's illegal for anyone to incite or to compel those in uniform towards insubordination. So it's not just the words, but it's also the inference. And there's clearly a strong case to be made on that one, in my mind.
Were they saying it, Brent, do you think, to get into the minds and the hearts and minds of military members now? Or were they saying it to tell Congress, hey, we've set the stage, go find the crime? Or was it both?
Well, I think an investigation is warranted. I think the DOJ needs to find out. Was this political action groups that were trying to get more clicks and for fundraising, and they didn't do their due diligence, and they just got these six former military and CIA agents to go on and do some very ill-informed commentary, and they didn't think anything of it? Or were they intentionally trying to sow doubt in the military officers so that they would be inclined towards insubordination? I think we need to do an investigation to find out what's truthful and the full extent of who's culpable in this case, because it's probably more than the six that you saw in the video.
Well, if it's the latter, though, Brent, could it literally be sedition?
I think it's a very high bar to get into to sedition. I think the federal statute that I mentioned comes with some pretty severe, jail time and fine.
Yeah.
I think it would be severe enough for certainly censure at the least of the elected members.
There is some talk, and it's Brent Sadler, get his book called Naval Power in Action, Seizing the Initiative in the New Cold War with China. There is some talk about taking out some targets on the mainland. That gives me pause. Yes. I don't want us to go and attack, the center part of Venezuela. But if there are ports right there on the ocean where they're loading up the drugs, or if you've got drug manufacturing or processing mills or plants right there on the coast, do we have the right to take them out? I don't want to go and start a war with Venezuela. Yeah. But again, if they don't stop this operation that's killing 100,000 Americans a year, I think we have the right to do something. What do you think?
Well, I mean, the commander-in-chief does have quite a bit of wide latitude constitutionally. I would caution that when you start to take attacks on land, the political consequences, and you're already starting to see that in Congress right now, bipartisan, it's starting to agitate. It becomes a much more tricky political question, let alone the overseas diplomatic aspect. I mean, the region, Latin America has a history, the United States, and if we aren't smart about this, we might alienate some of those who really want to help us in this fight against the cartels, and specifically against Maduro and his regime. But I think it, always has been advice. It's actually in that book. You can see it in the background there. Naval Power in Action. There is a fairly long section devoted to what we're seeing, and that is put the cartels out of business and taking out their products in order for them to stay in business and to have their influence and pay off their political and security benefactors. They got to make money. The only way they make money is moving product to market. And there's two markets you got to cut them off from: the United States and Europe. In order to get that product to market, it's got to go over international waters and international airspace. They're extremely vulnerable there. Stay there. It's going to take a little bit longer. But again, for political reasons or operational, perhaps if the Department of War, the President of the United States decides, we can't keep doing this approach, they found a way around it and the danger is going to go up, we might see these attacks. I would say it's important to note, they already talked about 34 sites. So there's a list, a target list that's already very mature.
And the word that we're getting is that Maduro is scared to death. I mean, he should be, right?
Yes. No, he should be. He absolutely should be. He tried to cut a deal where he would basically walk away from Russia and China. He didn't mention anything about his connections to the Iranians, the IRGC, and other nefarious groups like Hezbollah and Hamas that are also using Venezuela.
And they're all doing that because of the proximity to us, right? I mean, they get into this part of this part of the world. It gets them away from the Middle East, and it gets them almost in attack range. So, I mean, this is you can look at it like Venezuela, all this influx from China, Russia, from Iran, but also you got Cuba right there, which can play nicely with them, and then suddenly you've got a means to attack the United States. Do you think that's what they were building?
I think it was probably so. They've been there for a couple of decades. This is not a new thing. The folks in the DEA have been aware of this. Other agencies for many years have been aware of this. And it's not just in Venezuela. This is actually a multinational problem in Latin America. So I don't think it's new. I do think it's important to note that in the new national security strategy came out very late last night, they do talk about the Western Hemisphere. And there's an old saying that it's darkest at the base of the lighthouse. And so Western Hemisphere, I think we took for granted for far too long that, oh yeah, there's no real problems here. Nothing can hurt us in the near abroad. And the reality is there's a lot of bad actors with a lot of capacity that we've allowed to mature for far too long.
Brent Sadler, Senior Research Fellow over at heritage.org. Get his book. It's called Naval Power in Action. Let's talk about China. I think that to our own peril, we don't think about China as much as we should. We know they were completely taking over a lot of our institutions with the Confucius institutions. I know that we're pushing them out of our educational academia. I know that there's a push right now from J.D. Vance and others to stop them from owning even an inch of American land. Why they ever bought land doesn't make any sense. Yeah. We know a lot of illegal aliens coming across the border were from China, and we know that if you're from China, part of your job, even as a regular citizen, you've got to report back to Beijing. So I believe we've dropped the ball a little bit. Maybe we're waking up again. What have they been doing while we've been mired in Ukraine and Russia? We've been mired in the Middle East. We're solving problems around the globe, but I just don't feel like we've been focusing on China as much as we should. What have they been up to?
So this is something I've been like my mission number one for many, many years, going back at least 15 years in government and uniform, and that is the Chinese have taken a very long and very methodical approach to this. They have influence networks here to go after, like we've already seen, go after our elected members. They've taken a long view on that. They'll get them while they're in college and stay close all the way through. And the one chance they might have someone who's elected to be president or senator or member in Congress or governor. So they have a very methodical, insidious kind of approach on the influence side. They also use money. There's a lot of Chinese stocks on the market that are listed, not held to the same standard we hold other, to include American stocks and accounting. And of course, money into many political groups and other NGOs, as well as communities, to try to sway through the pocketbook and influence. Of course, the Confucius Institute's a very direct intelligence front also for the Chinese Communist Party. So it's not surprising that whenever someone tries to stand up to kind of say, we've got a problem to push back, you're not only having to worry about the Chinese over there, the Chinese Communist Party over there, you often are working against even American institutions that have wedded their best interest or their bottom line to Beijing rather than to D.C. or to Wall Street or Main Street.
Brent, here's what I don't get. What do they want? What specifically does Beijing want? They just want to be able to say, we're the biggest, baddest superpower on the planet? Is that really what it's about? What is this?
Well, I mean, the first thing is they are a communist regime, and communism is inherently, I guess, very defensive or very insecure.
Okay.
And so whenever there's something that could challenge the orthodoxy of communism or their failed nation state kind of approach in economics, it's just totally failed. They know it's a threat to their political dominance and everything they stand for. Really, it's like Solzhenitsyn, an old political refugee out of the Soviet Union. It is against human nature what the communists try to do, or socialists. And so anything that works like a democracy in the United States it's a threat to them. So you got that. And so anything they can do to try to weaken us or distract us or to make us more subservient to or prone to their influence, they're going to do it. If they want to do a war, the near-term danger is over Taiwan. And they know, the Chinese Communist Party knows, that the time for them to secure Taiwan inside their communist regime is fast fading away from possibility as the region, not just the U.S., builds up their militaries as well as their economies to Chinese influence. So there's a window of opportunity for them. We're in a very dangerous time right now where they might try to act earlier, but if there's a communist regime, even after the dust settles in the next war, they're still going to be trying to get inside and change us from the inside out.
What doesn't make sense to me is that they didn't go after Taiwan while Biden was in office. And I'm glad they didn't. I'm not here to say that I want them to. I want Taiwan to be independent and have their own lives and not be controlled or a part of China. Having said all of that, when Biden left Afghanistan the way he did, it looked to me to be a signal to China, do whatever you want. Russia said, hey, we can do whatever we want. They rolled into Ukraine. Why didn't China try? I'm glad they didn't, but why didn't they?
Yeah. So the short of it is they weren't ready. And the other is they're very risk adverse. And there's nothing more risky in human endeavors than combat. David and Goliath comes to mind.
Yeah.
And long odds, sometimes the dice roll right and the underdog wins. So they know this. They know it's very risky. So they want to maximize their chances of success. And they just don't feel they're ready. This is the 2027 Davidson window that sometimes gets brought up.
Right.
It's an economic, military, political all mixed together. So when Biden came in, it certainly was getting risky, but they knew we had a lot of military capacity and weapons. So you have a war that breaks out in Ukraine, and we dump lots of weapons in there, many of the same type that we have to use in a Pacific war against China. So the longer that war goes on, the better for China, knowing it's draining our armory. And then, of course, Iran decides to stoke the flames in the Middle East. It's proxies. Distracts us more. We keep a large flotilla of ships in the Red Sea, trying to open up the Red Sea against Houthi attacks. That's all good for China. And when they decide to pull the trigger, let's say in 2027 or 2028, that's less U.S. munitions, less U.S. platforms that they're going to have to confront.
It's very interesting because if China goes into Taiwan, are we on the hook like we were told we were with Ukraine? We really weren't on the hook to do all we did for Ukraine the way that we did. Because if you remember, Obama, when Crimea was taken, said we'll send you some MREs and we'll send you some blankets and some sheets. It wasn't about going and defending them militarily or giving them all this money or all this other stuff. If China were to attack Taiwan, are we on the hook somehow? Is there a treaty? Is there paperwork? Is there a memorandum that says that we have to do something?
Well, there's no treaty, and there was no treaty with the Ukrainians either. I mean, the Biden administration, it's like not even, and, I think the Ukrainians learned their history there, and it's really what they got. The lesson from the Ukrainian experience is you're responsible for your own defense at the end of the day, and they did not do that leading up to 2014, and certainly in the almost 8 years between the 2014 to 2022 invasion. They didn't do enough of their own defense, so it's on them. And certainly the Biden administration it was a comedy of errors. But when it comes to Taiwan, what I have said for many years to very senior people that think, well, why would we? Why would we be compelled? And the issue is, as a democracy, the American public is what's going to compel political leadership. Right now, at any given day, there's 50 to 80,000 American citizens living or visiting or working in Taiwan. When the Chinese start to execute their invasion or blockade, it all invariably ends up in a massive missile attack, bombardment of the island. There will be Americans killed. It will be graphic. We will be seeing it in the news and social media, bombarded. There is no politician in this country that's going to be able to tell their constituents after that we're just going to sit this one out. It just, on a purely political basis, I can't see a circumstance where we would allow that to just happen without a response, a military response.
It's Brent Sadler, Senior Research Fellow, Naval Warfare and Advanced Technology at heritage.org. Get his book called Naval Power in Action, Seizing the Initiative in the New Cold War with China. Go and grab that. It's going to be a great education for you. Let me finish with this. Russia and Ukraine. It appeared as though Zelensky wasn't down with the peace plan, and then he was, and then Russia really wasn't, but they were. They're still blowing each other up. How does this thing end? Are we closer than we've been? Does it look good?
Well, I mean, in my calculation, going back all the way back to the early spring of this year, it wasn't clear to me that either side was ready. I think Ukraine very clearly wants to end the war and is ready, and is, I think, very smartly corrected their approach to the Trump White House. And that's good on them, but very late in coming.
Yes.
When it comes to the Russians, the Russian people don't want this war to continue, and the cost in lives has been significant. Putin, however, wants to achieve his objectives, because if he doesn't, he runs the risk of having some disgruntled, significant people in his government that may see him as an impediment to Russia's regaining its righteous glory, or whatever they feel.
Right.
And I think he is kind of stuck in a corner. He's painted himself in a corner. And I think you're going to see a lot of bluster. And I think in a few more weeks, you're going to see Russia realize that there is no relenting. He's going to try and show that, hey, I can continue this as long as possible. The reality is he can't. And what shouldn't happen is giving in to his demands in these negotiations. And rather, what I think needs to happen is, to quote from The Godfather, is he needs to be made an offer that he cannot refuse. And that means you got to get weapons to the Ukrainians. Like when Trump mentioned the potential of moving cruise missiles in there, like Tomahawks.
Yeah.
Putin was very willing to get on an airplane and talk real quick.
Yeah, he
was also really eager to get on a plane. And he went to Alaska when Trump said, hey, I'm going to start putting secondary sanctions on your big benefactors in India, buying your oil, and China, who's buying your oil, but also giving you lots of equipment. So there's a little bit of cost here. Make an offer he can't refuse still.
Well, listen, I appreciate the reference as an Italian guy. You know, I get it. So, but the offer doesn't include him getting any of the land. Is he going to get anything he wanted?
Well, I think the reality on the battlefront is there's a great historical kind of analogy to what's going to happen, I think, and that's Kashmir. And India and Pakistan have what's called the effective line of control between the two of them, and their military pulled away from.
Right.
If the Ukrainians were to do what the Russians said, vacate totally out of the Donbass, the most fortifiable defensible positions that hold the Russians back would have been given to the Russians, and then the next stop is, major cities like Dnipro or Kharkiv. And the problem with that is that war then rapidly goes against the Ukrainians, and it makes it more enticing for the Russians to restart the war later. So I think what you're going to see is a freezing of the fighting where it is right now, because it's certainly very bloody, and it's hard for the Russians to make any advances. You freeze it, the two sides pull away 20 kilometers. The nature of the war right now, that's an important distance.
Yeah.
But they need to pull away from each other on both sides verifiably, and then they can continue many months of discussions like the Minsk Accords and debates that they had for years to figure out what will be the final borders, the officially recognized borders. But the key thing is stop the fighting, separate, effective distance. Both sides will immediately go to rebuilding. So the European partners saying they want a stronger and push back the Russians, well, that's their window of time to actually do something about it, perhaps.
All incredible information from Brent Sadler. Of course, it's Sadler. Go to heritage.org to find out more. He's a senior research fellow there. But get his book. It's called Naval Power in Action, Seizing the Initiative in the New Cold War with China. Brent, always appreciate the knowledge and the time. Thanks so much for coming on today.
Thank you. Have a good day.
All right, brother. You too. We're back after this. Stay right here.